Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and Karin Bursa with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Karin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Wonderful. Temps are cool. It's crisp. Football weather is here. We've had just coming off a great trip, which we may touch on later. But life is good right now, Karin.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. It's a great day to be in supply chain, and I'm happy to be here with you and the Supply Chain Now team.
Same. And you know what? Beyond the two of us and the smartest audience in all of global supply chain who's tuned in, we've got two rock and roll guests and a great show teed up, timely show. We're going to be dialing it in once again on the hot topic of freight security, answering questions such as, hey, what are some of the risks you need to know about in this ever-evolving dynamic environment? What are some of the critical considerations when it comes to taking a strategic approach, especially to building your supply chain tech stack? What are some of the most important organizational cultural elements that are most effective when it comes to optimizing freight security? Most effective and getting to be most required. All of that and much, much more. Should be a great show, huh, Karin?
It really should. I've been looking forward to this conversation and been paying attention to really some of the freight risk that's going on out there and the increasing theft that's underway. So I can't wait to hear what our panel has to say today.
Me too. This is a kind of a follow-up from the last conversation you and I hosted with one of our guests about a month ago. So that went over really, really well. There's two things, though, folks. Two things we want to ask from you because this one's going to be also a great conversation. So let us know, number one, let us know what you think. Share your comments throughout this live discussion. Make sure you tell us where you're tuned in from and what you think about the conversation and the points we're making. And secondly, if you enjoyed today's show, and we sure hope you do, be sure to share it with a friend or your network. They'll be glad you did. Okay, Karin, as you shared two wonderful guests here today, I want to welcome in our distinguished panel, Richie Daigle, Enterprise Account Executive with Tive, and David Shillingford, co-founder of Everstream Analytics and venture partner at Columbia Capital. Hey, Richie, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing well. Good to see you again, Scott. And you as well.
Man, we had a great conversation last time, Karin and Richie. Richie played professional baseball, and we just about made it through the hour without talking about supply chain, Karin. That was tough. There's a lot more. Folks, go check out that episode, and we'll have to have Richie back and take a deep dive into his professional baseball career. And back by popular demand as well, David, old friend of the show. Great to see you, David Shillingford.
Great to be here, Scott.
Appreciate all that you do, and especially all the thought leadership you put out there in industry, helping to change how business is being done. Okay, well, let's do this. We've got a jam-packed conversation, but you all know where we start things. I like to start with a fun warm-up question because no matter what's going on in supply chain, our personal lives, our family lives continue every single day, which is a wonderful thing. So, David, you earned a nickname around here a couple of years ago. I think it was the James Bond of global supply chain. And that is high praise, my friend. Now, we've done some homework and we understand you and your family have been living on planes here recently. What's one lesson that all this air travel has either taught you or maybe retaught you?
So, something I've discovered, maybe rediscovered, is a trick. Particularly in airports, where as I go through the airport, my aim is to try and make one person's day a better day. And it might be the agent at the gate, it might be another passenger, it might be someone who's working in the airport. It might be a smile, it might be something I can say to them. And what I've discovered is that in doing that, it makes me more aware of the people around me. It's a better experience, and it makes me happier as well.
I love that, David. What a wonderful way of starting the conversation. And I need to subscribe to that. A lot of times I'm thinking someone out there as I travel is trying to make my day a little bit worse, but I'm kidding. I need to subscribe to David's perspective there. Richie, that's going to be tough to beat, but you've got a big life event that I think all of us can relate to. you're in the process of a big family move up there in the beautiful Tennessee mountains. How's that process going?
Yeah, it's been a process, and I think I need to borrow a line out of David's book there of yeah, try to make someone's day a little bit better. You know, whether it's air travel or moving, like there's a lot of stress associated with these things, and yeah, it's sometimes you just have to take a step back and look at it from a big point of view. But yeah, it's been a process. We've been on multiple homes. We've been looking for 9 months or so, and lots of big roller coaster moments and ups and downs and everything that goes along with that. But we've found a place, and now the fun part is starting, which is packing and purging and these types of things.
And I love how much, first off, congratulations. That's wonderful for your family. And we'll have to get a picture of the new home and all. But I see you're a quick learner too, because in the pre-show, folks, Karin was offering some unsolicited advice about the whole moving process. She was like, purge stuff everywhere. Karin, that's pretty accurate advice. And appreciate you sharing. And also, but you and your family took on a great trip here recently, which is a bit of a tradition, especially in mid and North Georgia, maybe. And that's the apple picking orchards, especially the place called Mercier's up in on the way to Blairsville, Georgia. Tell us about the Blue Ridge. That's right. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we went to, it had been a couple of years since we'd actually gone out and picked the apples. We usually take the easy way and just go through the store, but went out and picked apples. But it has become quite the event now. You've got taste tables where you can compare the tastes of multiple apples, hard cider, regular cider, but apple fritters, apple pies, you name it. I think we walked out of there about 10 pounds heavier.
It's like a scene from Forrest Gump. They have apple instead of shrimp everything. They have apple everything. Yes. And folks, if you ever go, I would highly recommend those apple fritters. They are delicious. Great times up in Mercier's. Well, David, Richie, and Karin, what an outstanding conversation we have here today. Really timely topic. And you know what? We have James from Chicago. Welcome in, James. And Mayor, welcome back, Mayor, also from Chicago. We're going to be talking about Chicago in just a second, and not the white, but we're going to be talking about a supply tie-in with the wonderful, awesome city of Chicago in just a second. But welcome in. Okay, so let's start with giving some context, David, Richie, and Karin. And David, it's been a while since you've been with us. Really appreciate what you and the team been doing over at Everstream Analytics. If you would tell us briefly about your background, right? But also tell us in a nutshell what you're up to these days.
Yeah, sure. So background wise, first career was in the British Army. When I left, came to the US and have been through a series of startups, generally around risk and analytics. More recently, supply chain. Most recent venture was Everstream Analytics, which I stepped back from. I remain an advisor, but I stepped back from that about a year ago, and I'm now a venture partner at Columbia Capital.
That is outstanding. It was great to see you at Gartner Supply Chain Symposium a few months back, and especially appreciate your support of our veterans community as always, David. Richie, same thing for you. Now, as Karin and I were sharing on the front end, you were with us about a month or so ago, had an outstanding conversation where we tackled some baseball, a little bit of supply chain. I'm kidding. We did that vice versa. But Richie, if you would briefly tell us about your background for any of our new listeners and a little bit about what Tive does.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So if you go back far enough, as you know, I played baseball for a little while. That was many years ago. Since then, I've been an entrepreneur. I've worked in the travel industry for a number of years, but for the last 5 years, I've been in supply chain technology, and been with Tive for close to 3 years now. Tive is all about raising awareness of shipment location as well as conditions while shipments are in transit. And what's cool about Tive is the whole company is just bent on this mission to help companies make sure their shipments are arriving on time and in full. so that what people hold dear to them and what matters makes it to its end destination. So it's cool being part of a company that has such a laser focus and is providing technology that can make a difference.
I bet it's very fulfilling and rewarding as you are changing how business is done. And Karin, we have an interesting 1-2 punch here between David and Richie, both repeat guests, which we always love that family repeat guests, but what they're doing and also kind of how they what they do kind of interlaps. I think it's an interesting panel for our audience. Your thoughts there, Karin?
Yeah, I agree. I love the Internet of Things and the ability to really monitor what's happening across your network, but also to harness that information for strategic evaluation and to look at the analytics and trends and hopefully some additional predictive capabilities. So I'm really interested to hear what both Richie and David have to say, because Richie, you piqued my interest on this topic of, security in freight. When we spoke last time, I had no idea that the rate of theft has been increasing so dramatically. So anything we can do to turn that around, I think just benefits our supply chains in a multitude of ways.
Excellent point there, Karin. And I would argue that a lot of folks in the industry, even some of the most well-connected supply chain pros out there, don't realize that cargo theft is on the rise. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of hands will go up there. Yeah. So very timely conversation, and I think you said it well, Karin. All right, a couple quick shout outs. Let's see, Danelle tuned in from Trinidad and Tobago. Great to see you, Danelle. Looking forward to your takes throughout the conversation. David tuned in from Mexico City. Great to see you, David. And Steve Green from my home state, Greenville, South Carolina, the upstate. Great to see you, Steve. Looking forward to your perspective here today. Okay. And Richie, by the way, going back to those apple orchards, I didn't miss that joke you put in a private chat about hoping Karin made some nice core memories. You can fit in right. He fit in well here, Richie. You fit in well.
The dad jokes are alive and well in the supply chain.
That's right. Plenty of supply, no shortages.
What's that, Richie? Peel one off every once in a while.
Oh man, it's getting deep. It is getting deep, folks. All right. Well, let's continue setting the table a little bit more. And we're going to do this a couple different ways. So David, from where you sit, and we're talking about this ever evolving, ever increasing freight security environment. Give us a couple of opening observations, David, that sets the table nicely.
Yeah, I think one way I'd say to open the conversation is it's helpful to think about cargo crime like in any other business. It's subject to all of the same dynamics that drive other businesses in terms of what's going on in general in the supply chain with the workforce, with the economy in general, with specific commodity prices, with technology, with digitization. These are all things we spend a lot of time thinking about in the supply chain and trying to work out how do they impact our operations, but they also have an impact on cargo crime because the criminals are always thinking risk versus reward, and what they're stealing and how they're stealing it, where and when they're stealing it are going to vary depending upon those types of dynamics in the environment.
Yep. And, one of the points you're kind of speaking to or implying there, Karin, what I'm hearing is what we touched on last time with Richie, the democratization of technology and market intelligence and having the world at our fingertips. All the good actors can benefit from that. But unfortunately, it gives the bad actors an opportunity to refine and up their game as well. And we're seeing that play out across the freight security environment. Your quick thoughts, Karin, on what David shared there.
Yeah, I do think we have to be very conscious of that in supply chain where we're working so hard to be lean and mean from an inventory perspective. We just don't maintain the buffers necessary, for these unexpected crimes and additional risk that introduces. So I think that where we can take control and gain visibility, we need to take those steps so that we can either expedite the resolution or completely avoid the incident in the first place.
That's right. Let's avoid it altogether. Excellent point, Karin. And really quick, Katie, great to see you tuned in from Seattle. Folks, we got whether from South Carolina to Seattle to Mexico to Trinidad and Tobago, Chicago. Let us know what you're seeing in your supply chain markets, especially when it comes to cargo theft, freight security incidents. We'd love to see that and hear that. All right, so Richie, since you last joined us, I think that was about a month ago or so. And folks, you can go check out the replay. We'll maybe drop a link, make it really easy, put it in the comments. Richie gave a great chat with us. What's been one development or news story in freight security that's gotten your attention since your last appearance with us, Richie?
Yeah, it's just a few days ago. I saw on Twitter and on LinkedIn, there's a number of people posting it. There was video footage of like thieves thieving. There was a railroad, a train, a bunch of freight on the rail, double stack containers, and there were a number of people who were opening these containers and pulling freight out. And it was just right there, it was right present for so many people to see. Reported freight theft is up. Some people are arguing, well, maybe that's just better reporting, or people are more comfortable reporting. But the general consensus or the feeling that a lot of people that are on the front lines have or would tell you is that no, reality is it's probably even worse than what's being reported. So it's interesting just to see that on my phone, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on all these other social media outlets happening. And a lot of people were seeing that as well. So yeah, that definitely caught my attention here just a few days ago.
It's interesting. Even when certain things take place, when you see it live and on video, it is a stark reminder of it. Kind of makes the data, it makes it leap off the page. And speaking of the data, and Karin, I loved your mantra last when Richie joined us that whole week. The mantra was facts, not feelings, right? So if you look at the data, which Richie was pointing to, according to some estimates, cargo theft is up almost 50% here in 2024, year over year. So folks, take that one to the bank. And then secondly, Richie was talking about that the theft of the rail car there on the west side of Chicago, which I think that was last week, caught on video. 6 folks were arrested. Well, local media is reporting that in the state of Illinois alone, that brings the total to 174 cargo thefts across the state, and that's been increasing. They've been reporting since 2020, so it's not even a new story. Karin, your thoughts there, kind of how Richie brought it home, what the data is telling us, the stark imagery of folks in the act. Your thoughts there, Karin?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you're getting at, and that is when you see it and experience it firsthand, it really starts to hit home. So for me, that was just another teaching moment about supply chain. So it's kind of like COVID when we couldn't get toilet paper, right? Here, when you see this reported and you see that it is so organized in some situations that you just want to sit back and say, gee, if they could just use those skills for good and not evil, what could we do? How could we change the world? But it's a very real, very tangible problem. And I think, as Richie said, it may still be underreported. The problem may be bigger still than what we're aware of.
Excellent points there. Excellent points. And if they could all just refocus, redivert those efforts to building a better world, where we would be. Jose talks about how this is a huge topic in Mexico. Tell us more, Jose. Jenny also saw, great to see you up there in Wisconsin, doing big things at University of Wisconsin at Madison. Also saw that live chopper feed, and she's like, yikes, it's not just on the coasts in terms of the freight problem. Maria, hello, Maria, tuned in from Madrid once again. Great to see you. Musa Muhammad tuned in from Nigeria. Great to see you. And Danelle wraps with this. A lot of these in Trinidad are especially due to lack of proper paperwork regarding ownership of the container and cargo. And the container should go to one location and is being found many miles away in the possession of someone else. All sorts of different methodologies. So great. Appreciate you sharing that, Danelle. Okay. So folks, our topic, if you can't tell, is a good one. And we get to pull from expertise from Richie and David here. It's confronting ever-changing dynamics in freight security, and we got a ton to get more into. Want to start with this phrase, this operative phrase, ever changing. Now that applies to many things across global supply chain, global business, maybe even humanity these days, but especially as it relates to freight security. It's critical to understand that. It's not a static risk on any level. So David, let's start with you. Speak to, if you would, this dynamic nature of freight security and the overall supply chain risk it poses.
Yeah, I think the thinking about the evolving nature, I think it's a good and important theme, because you've got, on one hand, what I would describe as opportunistic theft, and that's pretty hard to predict. It's going to pop up here and there. I think what happened in Chicago on Friday is a good example of opportunistic theft, and that's very hard to predict. And that in itself is going to be happening in different places and at different times. The more organized side of cargo theft, that's gonna ebb and flow depending upon where the cargo criminals see opportunity. That's going to depend in part in terms of what the marketplace is like. What do they think they can sell? What do they think they can sell quickly without being caught? And then on the other side is they're looking at the movement of freight and where are things finding themselves in bottlenecks, and all of that is going to be changing. And then on top of that, you've got the sort of bigger, maybe sort of more macro changes, particularly around digitization, both on the side of the criminal and the side of those who are looking to combat cargo theft. The IoT devices that Tive specializes in are a good example of something that is rapidly evolving and providing more and more opportunities to combat cargo crime. And then on the other side, as Karin was saying, you've got opportunity and risk around information to help you understand cargo theft dynamics and where you need to be better defended, but also information that gets into the wrong hands and allows cargo thieves to target certain loads. So there's a lot of different dynamics that are moving different ways, different times, that is really making this it is a moving target for sure.
No doubt. And Richie, I want to get your perspective next and then Karin's, but it's interesting on the front end of David's response. He's basically talking about how the cargo thieves or supply chain pros are getting into demand forecasting, figuring out what they should target to sell. And I'm only smiling to keep things light. But secondly, they're also leading their own digital transformation efforts. I mean, it really is a fascinating component of global supply chain and the risk, of course. Richie, what else would you add, especially to this dynamic environment where, it changes, it seems like, from day to day?
Yeah, I think there's these big sociological sort of macro shifts that are happening in the economy where, last time I went to a shopping mall, there's hardly anybody there. No one's shopping in a shopping mall. Everyone's shopping at home, online. Mm-hmm. People are utilizing Facebook Marketplace and eBay, and, there's people that can make a good living just selling things themselves out of their house via Marketplace and so forth. So the whole entire marketplace or mall arena has shifted. And I think that has been opportunistic for bad actors. Now it's a lot easier to turn XYZ cargo into money. Maybe they didn't want to steal a whole container worth of, widgets prior, because what do we do with them? How do we offload these? Well, now it's really easy to do that. And so I think that's impacting opportunistic theft and strategic theft. Maybe 5 or 10 years ago, a train is sitting still for a few hours and everyone just rides by it and doesn't think twice. And now people are looking at it like, what's inside those containers? I want to go have a look. Maybe it's something I would like, but if I don't like it, it's something I might be able to turn into money really fast. And then, the organized criminals are catching on to that as well. And they're utilizing technology to be more targeted and pinpointed and say, we want to specialize in selling these items. And so can we identify those items in transit, target them, find vulnerabilities and weak spots, and steal them accordingly? So I think there's all these different factors that are at play that are influencing behavior, both at the opportunistic level and the strategic level.
Excellent perspective there, Richie and David. Karin, What did you hear there that you want to highlight and spike the football on?
Yeah, I think Richie's last point about opportunistic theft as well as organized initiatives is really important, but also thinking about this in both the physical terms of where that freight is or where those high value items might be located, and where they were last monitored. But there's also the digital, how we keep our digital information secure as well. And just with the rate that data is multiplying these days, that gets more and more challenging. There's high value in it. You hear me say all the time, replacing risky inventory with valuable insights. This is an opportunity for it to go both ways.
Excellent point, Sarah
Scott,
Karin. And two quick points. I want to bring in. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that, because I think there's a really interesting case recently where the delivery of iPhones has been targeted, where they're essentially being stolen off the front porch, and the volume in which that is happening, the speed with which it's happening, and can only be as a result of targeting, and that targeting could only be as a result of the criminals having hold of the order and the tracking numbers. And it's an important point, because companies forever have been trying to get the right balance between consumer convenience and security. You look at loss prevention within bricks and mortar stores. You want people coming in and having a very sort of frictionless experience, but you also don't want people walking out with stuff that they haven't paid for. And it's the same
Right.
now with e-commerce, where people want to know where their stuff is and when it's going to arrive, and you want to be able to type in a tracking number and see where everything is all the time. But only the person who is supposed to see that should be able to see that, and that's not the way things are set up at the moment. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of work to be done around the idea of sort of, data should be need to know.
Yes. Well said, David. I'm glad you added that. And I also want to add this from Sherry. This is interesting. I got two quick comments I'm bringing here. Sherry says, hey, thanks for bringing up the Chicago videos and the real thefts in Chicago. I'm on the front lines of theft as a WW Worldwide Insurance and Risk Manager. I'll call it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry. She continues, theft affects our clients, carriers, insurers, and supply chain providers. And we feel this problem is well underreported. We tend to agree with you, Sherry. Sherry also agrees with Richie. Organized crime and targeted theft, very big problem. Not enough FBI resources to address this in the U.S. And finally, we asked Jose about Mexico, and he says that a lot of the freight theft operations down there start as opportunistic, and then they start to understand and find distribution routes, and all that turns into constantly planned criminal activity. Well said, Jose, in a disruptive, scary sort of way. Okay, so let's keep driving here. I want to go back to we constantly, Karin, talk about elevating things into more strategic, comprehensive, holistic approach, and that's where I want to go next with this question, starting with Richie first. Talk about the importance of taking a true strategic approach to freight security, especially as we build the optimal tech stack. Richie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the industry is in what I would call the AA moment, the Alcoholics Anonymous moment, where we need to take the first step and say we have a problem. Yeah, and admit that, and really let that sink in, and everybody get on the same page, and stop trying to sweep it under the rug or pretend like it doesn't exist, but accept that this is a problem that's getting worse and is expected to continue to get worse. I think that the vision or the goal of building a tech stack to combat this is going to be raising overall awareness across the board, awareness of who you're doing business with, awareness of the way that you're setting up your paperwork, the way that how you're vetting carriers and partners, the relationships that you have in place, being aware of the strength of those relationships and where those parties come from and how they operate, awareness, from obviously when where your shipments are in transit and the conditions that they're in, are doors opening? Are you having temperature issues? Elevating all of this awareness and then trying to automate that awareness where possible by relying on alerts so you don't have massive inefficiencies from people staring at screens, I think should be kind of the goal that people should be considering. And there's a lot of great technologies that can be layered upon each other and a tech stack that can be built that can achieve that. But I think awareness is the word, and I'm probably going to continue to say that word over and over during this conversation.
Well, I love your opening salvo of, we got to all admit as an industry we have a problem. And David posed a great question in the chat. Hey, is there a statistic, David asks, of the cost that cargo theft end up being paid by the final consumer? That will raise awareness, and that will help us address, admit this a problem. We'll see if we can't track something down for you, David. And Richie, also, given all that we want to have visibility on, it's a lot. Technology is the way to do it, right? Thankfully, there are great opportunities to really pull those levers and more to make it easier to put our eyes and ears and our team's focus on these threats here. But we have to invest in that for sure. David, in addition to what Richie has shared, when you think about that strategic approach to this problem that we all must identify and admit it's a problem, what would you add, especially as it relates to building the tech stack that's going to help not just optimize supply chain performance, but tackle this big old risk head on?
Yeah, I think supply chain performance is the right starting point, because you really want to sort of look at your overall approach to data collection and analytics across the supply chain management space, and then think within that of supply chain risk management broadly, and then for cargo security to be a component of that, and then work backwards from that, knowing that IoT devices would be an example of something that you want to deploy for all loads or for certain loads, and then to ask, well, what are the other uses that I can make of that data in running my supply chain? And so as much as possible, the approach needs to look at data and analytics, and how's that helping me with freight security? How's it helping me with other risks? And how's that helping me with the overall efficiency and management and planning of my supply chain? It's the same data. Some of it is used in planning, some of it is used in execution. It's all about, what is where, or what is going to be where, what risks might it face, what can I do to either avoid them or mitigate them, or at least be in a position to respond in a manner that is going to be as effective as possible.
Excellent stuff there, David. And Karin, when you've heard Richie and David talk about the strategic direction that supply chain leaders must take, especially when it comes to technology, your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So when I work with supply chain leaders, they tell me every strategic investment they're making, they're trying to boost visibility. My next question is always, what will you do with that visibility? So to David's point, how do we use that visibility or that knowledge of the environmental conditions or where the assets are located to then predict what's going to happen next, or be aware of what's going to happen next, and evaluate that on a more strategic level so that we can prevent a late order, not just be reporting a late order in that process.
Yeah, love that, Karin. And I got to add, I was talking about these two relevant points yesterday with some folks out in Phoenix. To your point specifically, Karin, visibility. It's not easy, but it's so much easier to get these days than in years gone past. And to your point, it is about what we do about it, with it, once we have it. It's like my dog, Sunny. I let her out 37 times a day. She bounds off the porch, jumps in the backyard. She's chasing after one of these 30 squirrels. But I know, I love Sunny, but I know she has no plans for when she one day catches one of those squirrels, right? And unfortunately, I think in my experience, there's a lot of organizations that get that visibility, but they're not optimizing what they do with it. And that's the billion, if not the $1 trillion question. And one other quick point, because technology, you have to You have to pull the lever on technology. We interviewed a manufacturing leader a few months back, and big enterprise. Their team reviews 13 trillion data records a day from 500,000 sensors across the organization. Now, you tell me, I took those 1987 courses in speed reading, but I'm not quite at 13 trillion data records a day. Technology has got to be the way, and they've been able to do it and reduce planned downtime in all their plants by 30% in the last 5 years by leaning into the right focused technology play. And we've got to do that, in my opinion, here when it comes to not just admitting the problem, but tackling this huge problem. Okay, sorry for a little diatribe there. Richie, you had another point to add.
One thing just to add to that, Scott, I was at a conference a few weeks ago and someone came and they said, listen, I can put an IoT tracker that tells on my shipment, it tells me when the doors are open, but that's not stopping somebody from taking it. If they're going to steal it, they're going to see a device and throw it away and steal it. And I'm still left with stolen freight. So why am I going to pay extra money for this tracker? And I think a lot of people have, whether it's IoT trackers or any other type of technology, they might be thinking in terms of black and white thinking. Like, is this going to solve my problem completely? Well, it might. Some of the data, when you analyze it, and you might pick up on trends that you can avoid those lanes or those times in the future that, you can get around that. But I think there's something to be said for the speed to reaction, and visibility and awareness can increase how quickly you become aware of a situation. And I think anybody that works in supply chain can probably, think about the difference of learning about an issue within 30 seconds of it occurring versus 8 hours later or a day later or longer. And now the ripple effects are much greater. The impact is much greater. So I think we have to be thinking about how quickly we're able to respond and what technology we have in place that can bring that to our awareness so that we're able to respond more quickly.
Well said, Richie. Hey, time is one of the greatest enemies. We got to be faster and faster, putting actionable information in our teammates' hands so they can make better, faster decisions. All right, so let's keep moving here. Man, I wish we had a couple more hours here, Karin. 1 hour is not enough. So we hosted a webinar a couple weeks ago. I guess it was last week, right? Because October is national, or is worldwide Cybersecurity Awareness Month, right? And David and Richie and Karin, we brought someone in from our friends at Omnia Partners, and this gentleman has been in cybersecurity for a long time. He actually goes on raids with authorities into like cyber criminals, headquarters and stuff. He's a part of dark web negotiations, trying to protect his clients. Been a part of thousands of negotiations. One of the many points that I captured in my 18 pages of notes with this expert was we have to instill that company culture of awareness and adaptability and agility in our efforts to combat cyber threats, cargo theft, and a whole bunch more. Your thoughts on the cultural element here, David?
Yeah, I think the culture starts at a pretty basic level, and that's the culture of the company overall. And I think two ways of thinking about that. One is, what is the relationship between management and employees within a company, and what is the relationship between the company and its partners, whether it's logistics providers or technology providers? How well able is how inclined is the company to partner outside of its four walls? Because the employees can either be your greatest asset or your greatest risk when it comes to cargo theft. And the companies that we see being really on the forefront of cargo theft prevention, almost all of them are very good at working with external third parties, because no company is an island when it comes to cargo theft. You've really got to have partnerships internally and externally, and that's a cultural thing. Companies either get that and they understand it, and they make sure that everyone is on side and working towards a common goal. or they're not. And you create weaknesses very quickly if you have the wrong culture.
Yeah, I loved I love all that, but no company is their own island in this battle, especially when you consider the ecosystems that any supply chain relies on. Excellent stuff there, David. Richie, what else would you add to that, especially when it comes to the cultural element of the battle?
I think a culture that promotes open communication is really important. People have to feel safe and able to voice concerns. I made a mistake. I'm not sure about this. They have to be able to feel comfortable to communicate that to their management, to leadership internally. You don't want a culture where there's so much fear in place that a broker is uncertain about something, but they don't want to say anything, and now they're being targeted and they're going down a rabbit hole that's just going to be really painful for a lot of people. So I think open communication internally within companies. I think company's ability to share information with partners, with other companies, even competitors at times, so that we're all kind of working collectively together against this is also really important. Sharing that we noticed this trend on this lane, even if it's with a competitor, that can be really helpful. We're all trying to get freight from point A to point B. We're the good guys. Mm-hmm. Let's understand that, we're on the same team in some regard. So I think open communication is really important. Strong partnerships, strong relationships are really important right now. And as much as we talk about technology, the human element is every bit or as more important today, with building trusting relationships and being able to share information openly with trusted partners.
Good stuff there, Richie, that critical information exchange amongst the trusted partners across the ecosystem. Karin, after what David and Richie shared here, culturally, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the piece especially around making sure your employees can voice up if they see something, if they identify a pattern that maybe the systems haven't identified, right? Through their intuition and their human creativity, they may see things connected that the data doesn't connect for us. The other thing is the relationship with these trading partners. In the past, Richie has shared opportunities to vet your partners because of some of the tracking capabilities that are available with Tive. But at the same time, being open in those communications of where your business has had challenge in a specific lane or transport mode, and asking for that information back from your partners is a way that we can either put more precautions in place or identify maybe less expeditious routes to market, but ones that will get there safely and securely.
Name of the game. Love that. Fast, safe, and secure. And trust. I don't want to overlook that trust. And there's so many different ways we can we can establish and build on trust across the ecosystems, which should not be overlooked as well, and within cultures. All right. So Richie, we're going to make your day here. This is cool. Katie Watson, let us know where you're tuned in from, Katie. And I think I shared this. Oh, it cuts you off a little bit. I'm just going to read it. So Katie says, previous incident last year, after booking with a trucker broker we outsourced to frequently, we had a rogue driver that no one could get a hold of. When requesting current location updates, the driver was saying they were in one place, but our Tive tracker was showing that they were not where they said they were, but really actually had an off random dirt road in another city. Man, it's like the Duke brothers or something. Katie continues to say, utilizing the Tive GPS trackers, we were able to track down some high value freight, and our account rep was all over tracking the truck down. The freight was located and ended up delivering successfully, but not all are that lucky. Richie, quick response. That's got to be, we know you're passionate about what you do, you and the Tive team, but hearing that from the Katies out there, that's pretty cool, huh?
It's exactly what we want to hear from our customers. Not that they're having challenges, but when they are having challenges, that they're able to take action. And I think there's something about control and controlling your visibility and not being dependent on a driver app or an ELD or some other form of location tracking. that's at play here. She didn't have to depend on that driver getting back. He's not answering, his story is not checking out, but she has control of her visibility. She knows what's going on. She's able to navigate that scenario successfully and got the freight from point A to point B. I mean, that's exactly why the technology exists, and that's a great example of how it's being used.
Excellent point. Because folks, even Superman goes rogue for at least one installment of the 37 movies out there, right? So that's part of the human element. Good stuff there, Richie and Katie. Thanks for sharing. All right, let's see here. We're gonna have a fast and furious finish, folks. Really enjoy Richie, David, Karin, what you're all sharing here, and all the great comments. I couldn't hit all of them so far. When it comes to how to respond, to respond to evolving risks, especially with flexibility and foresight, which is what modern supply chain management calls for. What would be your advice there, Richie? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think how to respond. That's a great question. First of all, is keeping a good barometer of what's going on in the market and the economy and all the big sociological factors that are having an impact on risk and theft risk specifically. I think that's a great first step. But then with that information, a lot of it's going to depend on what type of freight is being moved, what's going on in that specific moment. And only the supply chain professionals are going to know all of those details. But I will say, have a plan. We talked about the Greg Maddox, have a plan, know how to implement your plan and be able to execute. I think having an SOP built that is appropriate for the type of freight that's being moved, that accounts for a number of different scenarios that may occur, is really helpful, so that if those scenarios do occur, you can look at your plan. Here's our SOP, and let's go execute it accordingly. I think that it's going to put people way ahead of the curve, as opposed to, oh no, this happened. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And we're trying to figure out and problem solve in the moment. So just having a plan, building out SOPs and thinking ahead can go a long way.
Richie, I love that. You referenced one of my favorite baseball players, Greg Maddox. Folks, if you don't know Greg Maddox, he wasn't the most athletic pitcher of all time. He didn't have the hardest fastball. In fact, he didn't throw that hard at all. Had great control, but he didn't have a lot of things that modern day athletes have. But to Richie's point, he had a plan for every single game that he executed, and he became one of the best pitchers of the modern era, and certainly a Hall of Famer, and helped the Braves get 95 World Series. So, Richie, great call out there. David Shillingford, how else can we, what would be your advice in terms of the how?
Yeah, I think just building on what Richie was saying there, I think that everything that you do in response to a theft has to be thought of in advance. There's really nothing that can be done once the theft has occurred. And almost all of those things that you should do before a theft has occurred should be thought about in terms of layers. And as you build up those layers, depending upon what the freight is and other variables, you're also going to create a situation where theft is less likely to happen. Whether it's opportunistic, whether it's organized, it's rather like you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend. If your cargo is more secure in that truck stop than everybody else's cargo because of what you've put in place, they're not going to steal your cargo. They're going to steal someone else's. There are more than enough targets for them to hit. They only need one today. It's going to be someone else's if you've got the right things put in place. And don't reinvent the wheel. All of this has been thought through. It's been done before. If you're wondering how to get started, there are organizations out there that have spent decades compiling all of the necessary information, keeping it updated with new technology. And I'd encourage people to, reach out to those organizations, become part of them. Even if you're not carrying very high value loads, the principles are still the same.
Yes. And you're kind of, so David, I love where you went there. It's very actionable advice, and you're reading your crystal ball, because I'm about to close with getting one very actionable tip from both of y'all before we make sure we get y'all connected. So good stuff, David. And I loved your point there. I know, Karin, you liked it too. You don't have to become Carl Lewis in the race for cargo security. You just have to be a couple steps faster than some of your peers out there, or better yet, at least one peer. All right. So Karin, good advice. Great advice. Been there, done that advice from both Richie and David. Your thoughts?
Well, I do think technology can be a deterrent, right? So, and they pass your freight by and maybe pursue a different target. I do think that's important. I also would underscore Richie's point about standard operating procedures or a playbook. What do we do in this situation? What are the next logical steps, or how do we recover from this incident? And then I liked also what David shared earlier about analyzing these occurrences and events and looking for patterns and understanding, using analytics, to see maybe trends that we're not aware of initially. And when we can bring in data from broader data sources as well, that helps us identify, we were one incident in a group of 150 incidences, right? So that there is a hot spot, if you will, where these thefts may be occurring on a regular basis. And to do that, we have to report. So if we're under-reporting today, we need to up the reporting so that we can identify those hot spots and, help ourselves and potentially help others in the process as well.
That's right. Well said, Karin. So many great comments. Before we start to wrap here, T Squared, who holds down the fort for us on YouTube, talking about don't forget the chain of custody handoffs. Our dear friend Sylvia Judy is doing big things in the Port of Charleston. Is here with us talking about insurance. Jose is back talking about transportation control towers for visibility and creating geofences. Love all that. And then Richie, we're going to double down here. Sherry Ketchum, who was talking earlier in Worldwide Insurance about this being underreported. I'm going to pull this down so that I can just read this. Sherry says, our company is working hard to change the cultural understanding for both our employees and clients with specific initiatives implemented for the movement of high-value freight. We've also implemented Tive GPS trackers to be available at all gateways. Good stuff there, Sherry. Thank you for sharing. Okay, let's do this. We're going to make sure folks know how to get connected with Richie and Dave. We're going to get Karin's patented key takeaway. But before we do that, if you had to boil it down to one piece of advice that you would recommend both Richie and David that folks take a step they take today, right? We've shared a lot of outstanding expertise and perspective, but if you had to pick one thing that our audience would need to do today to tackle this massive threat, what would that be? And David, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna choose don't reinvent the wheel. I'm gonna say go find the people who've been figuring this out for decades and learn from them. And I can post links to the various different organizations that I would recommend people reach out to in my LinkedIn post today.
Excellent point, David. We don't have to vertically integrate every single need that we have within the organization. Let's be experts in where we should be experts, and then let's bring in the experts when we need to. Excellent point, David. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Richie, your one key suggested action for folks to take today.
Yeah, I think go back to the same word, awareness. Elevate your awareness. Understand that your response to freight theft starts before the load even leaves. And what technologies do you have in place? What relationships are you relying on? How are you tracking that freight? Do you have devices in place? And do you have SOPs in place to act if something goes sideways? So I think understanding that your response is going to start before the load even leaves, and doing some deep diving and some internal looking to see, are there opportunities to elevate awareness, whether that's through technology or relationships or both. But I think that's a good starting point.
Excellent point, Richie. And as I know you'd agree, for when things go sideways, because you're going to be hit at some point, and it's probably a good thing to assume that and plan for that. Good stuff, Richie. Karin, whether you want to comment on what David and Richie are suggesting or offer up your thoughts.
Well, I think great recommendations from both Richie and David. They've certainly given me some things to think about and to talk about more often, right? Not only being aware of the risk associated with theft, um, but how do we consider that as a part of our overall supply chain plans, especially in markets where we are trying to run as lean as possible and focus on service to our customers. This is an important step in that process, and we are protecting many times either valuable raw material or valuable finished product. And if it's finished goods headed to a customer, that's going to impact our customer service. And we don't want that, right? It's expensive in more ways than just straight cost in those situations. So valuable conversation. I think we need to start having it with our trading partners and also considering it in all aspects of supply chain planning.
Excellent point. Excellent point. All right, really quick aside. I love when certain things play out in the comments. We've talked about trust and relationships throughout the show here today. And our dear friend Sylvia Judy is talking about Sherry Ketchum, how she's been a valuable colleague and trusted advisor for 30 plus years. That's just, I love that. I really love that. Whether it plays out in the comments or whether it's when we reconnect out in industry or whether we go to, as Dave was talking about, bringing in experts with folks that have been in our trusted networks for a long time. That's really, there's some powerful opportunities there. So Sylvia and Sherry, Katie, everyone else, appreciate y'all sharing. Okay. Well, we want to give y'all an opportunity. If you haven't started a relationship with Richie and David and even Karin, we want to help make that happen. So let's make sure folks know how to connect with you both. And Richie, let's start with you. How can folks connect with you and the Tive team that's on the move?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name. I'm sure it'll pop up eventually. There's not too many Richie Daigles out there. But then richie.daigle@tive.com is my email. Feel free to reach out, even if it's just stories or whatever questions you have. I'd love to connect and hear more and learn more as well. So thanks.
And there's only one Richie Daigle with a nasty curveball out there. So folks, if you connect with Richie, talk supply chain, but also talk baseball, you'll enjoy it. All right. David, great to have you back. It's been too long. How can folks plug into you and everything, man? You and the Everstream analytics team, Columbia Capital Venture Group. How can folks connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest thing for me. As you know, I'm posting most days. I'll be posting today about this conversation. There's a lot to reflect upon. As far as Everstream is concerned, they're at everstream.ai, and lot more there.
There is a whole bunch more there. All right, Karin, I'm going to get your big takeaway in just a second as we wrap fast and furiously. I want to share a couple of quick resources here, really important resources, starting with our next conversation with Richie Daigle. Folks, we got Richie Daigle, we got Michael Caney back, who was with us a couple of years ago, and Tevin Taylor. I'm telling you, this is going to be a great conversation. And we're teed up for this webinar, registration-driven webinar on November 12th at 12 noon Eastern Time, where we dive even deeper into the ABCs of cargo security and loss prevention. Make sure you join us for that and bring your perspective and your voice like so many of y'all have done here today. And then secondly, folks, if you're not tracking, if you're not connected or following David Shillingford, especially on LinkedIn, other probably social and other places, but especially on LinkedIn, almost every day, much like today where he's sharing some of the key takeaways from today's conversation, almost every day he is sharing expertise in a very approachable way on some of the most important topics and developments of across global supply chains. So you're going to want to connect or follow David on LinkedIn. And I think we're dropping one of those here today. And also make sure you connect and follow Karin Bursa on LinkedIn, other places of social. Karin, this is going to be tough. You got the toughest question maybe of the whole day because Richie and David have shared a bunch of great perspective. What's one critical key takeaway that our audience has got to keep front and center?
Yeah, so clearly, Scott, there are some clever criminal minds out there. And until we can get them to apply those skills to good instead of evil, we have got to be more aware, and we've got to do what we can do to close those blind spots, to have the data necessary to either identify quickly a problem has occurred or resolve the issue in a proactive manner. So I love the fact that our community is responding with specific examples of what they've been able to do as well.
I do too, Karin. I'll tell you, the audience brought it here today. Loved all the comments. I know we couldn't hit everybody. Folks, we're going to try to make this as easy as possible. Oh, one quick thing. Also, as Karin talks about, fact over feelings.
Yes.
It's really important being honest with ourselves as an industry, what's taking place, so that we can really act with clarity and velocity. Let's see here. We are trying to make it easy for y'all. We dropped the webinar, one click away from signing up for that coming in November, as Richie Daigle makes a third appearance here on Supply Chain Now. We included David's LinkedIn summary. One click away, check that out, engage. He welcomes comments. Some of the great discussions happen in the comments, as I've kind of pointed out here. And of course, you can find and subscribe to Supply Chain Now wherever you get your podcast. We're making that easy there as well. Whew, okay. Man, what an outstanding episode. Really appreciate everyone's time, especially our audience, but what a great panel. Big thanks to Richie Daigle, Enterprise Account Executive with Tive. Thanks so much for being here, Richie.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Enjoyed the conversation. David, you're a must follow LinkedIn for everyone listening. Like, please go follow David. I get a lot from your post, so I appreciate that, and thank you for that. And Karin, it's always good to speak with you again as well.
Thank you, and good luck with the move. Good luck with the move.
Thanks.
You beat me to it, Karin. We need to see some pictures. We got to see your pictures putting that family to work. So in the beautiful mountains of Tennessee. But great to see you, Richie. And I agree with your sentiment there. Also, big thanks to David Shillingford, co-founder of Everstream Analytics and venture partner at Columbia Capital. David, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to join you guys. Great discussion. Thanks.
That's right. Safe travels as you continue your air travel around the globe, tracking down the family and all. And also, big thanks to Karin Bursa. Karin, great to have you here as always.
Thank you, Scott. And this is just a reminder to everybody in our audience, what you do every day matters. This has just been one topic that shows how important you are in the overall network that brings goods to market.
That's right. Excellent point there. And a great point to wrap on. But folks, you got homework. I hate to say it, you got homework. Homework doesn't stop with wherever you left school. You've got homework. Richie and David and Karin have dropped a lot of really actionable insights and expertise here today. I would challenge you to pick just at least one thing. Go back, have conversations, create that awareness, as everyone, especially Richie, has spoken about, or take a tool. Just take action, whatever you do, right? The threat is real, and we've got to admit that and start planning for that much, much more effectively as an industry. So with all that said, on behalf of the entire team here, of the entire Supply Chain Now team, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed, and we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.